There's basically 5 different types of solar financing that I'm going to lump into some big categories. One of them is paying cash. The next is leasing it. Sometimes some power payment agreements. Some leasing is another option. We have what we call industry financing. This is what most of the solar companies offer. You have second mortgages. There's both HELOC and kind of a fixed term. And then there's our Lowtility, kind of a first mortgage, including it in your first lien. Those are the main types of financing, and let's talk about each one really quickly and which is good, pros and cons. Cash is good. You're paying for it, it's done, and there's no other debt, and so really it's now just enjoying the savings from that. The only thing with cash to consider is it the highest and best use of cash? Would that cash be better placed in a different position? Meaning, let's say a system costs $30,000, just to pull it out there. Is it best spent at $30,000? Is it best spent in some other interest-bearing account? That situation is going to vary for everybody. The second is a lease. Now, lease basically, you're locking in your payment. Some other company owns the solar, and you are, instead of paying the power company, you're paying the leasing company. Now, the downside with that is it makes your house harder to sell. 2, it doesn't increase the value of your home at all. And 3, that because you don't own the solar, the third-party company does, any tax credit, any tax advantages all go to that company that you're making your payment to, your leasing payment to. So those are leases. Third, let's talk about industry financing. Industry typically goes like this. Pretty easy to qualify. Put in your name and your info, and they're going to tell you you're approved or not approved, whatever it might be. Because of that, there's no really verifications. 2 things that happen. 1, credit scores are a lot higher that you have to be approved for. And 2, because of that flexibility, it's really, really expensive. And what I mean by really, really expensive is they charge the dealers who use that type of industry financing a lot of money. Typically, traditionally, anywhere from 15 to 20%. So 15 to 20 points or percent of that cost of solar usually is just nothing but financing charge that the solar company is paying. So they basically pass that along to you since you're purchasing it. So for that ease, for that flexibility, for that speed, there's a 15 to 20% cost. What they also do is they basically say, all right, a portion of it is going to be interest only, or there's going to be a minimum payment for a time, and then when you get your federal tax credit. So let's say they basically say, all right, here's a $30,000 system. Let's see, there's a 30% federal tax credit. So we're going to finance the $30,000 of it, but you're going to get a $9,000 or 30% tax credit here. So $30,000 for 12 months, it's going to be like a lower interest payment. And then once you get your tax credit, then you put that and apply that to the loan. And so they run all of their payments on only financing that $21,000. And so that $21,000, and there's your payment. Usually it's on a 15 to 20. What we're finding now with that is most of those companies are slapping liens on property. There was a lot of high default ratio on that when people would sell a home, and so that financing now typically comes with liens. You're paying 15 to 20 points for it, and you don't get to keep that tax credit. So there's some pros and cons with the industry financing. Your next type of financing is secured financing, meaning you're going to use your home, you're going to use your home's equity. But it's a mortgage, you got to qualify for it. There's a HELOC. HELOC stands for Home Equity Line of Credit. Not a bad option. Some limited restrictions on the size of the loan compared to the value of your home. Downside is with HELOCs is we see that most people make just an interest-only payment, or they make a lower payment, they make the minimum payment. Often we get requests from consumers who finance solar with a HELOC. They come to us 3, 5, 7 years later, and they've just made minimum payments, and 5 years later they're still just as much as when they got it, or there's just been minimal there. So it's more of an interest-only kind of a short-term financing there. Your fixed rate seconds, the ones that are a specific amount with the principal and interest that amortize down, those typically have a little bit higher interest rate. And because they have a little bit of a higher interest rate, a lot of times they don't cash flow. So those are kind of your second mortgages. And again, lien with those as well. And because it's a second lien, there's no tax advantages there. So our Lowtility program, pros and cons to it. Pros, let's talk about the cons first. 1, it's a mortgage. So I'm going to need some income documents. I'm going to need some of those different things. And it's going to take, it just depends on your area, it depends on how good you are at getting us documents when we need. It's going to take anywhere from about 15 to 30 days on average, right? Depending on how fast we get the stuff from you that we need. But the pros are really quite a bit. 1, you get your tax credit. You got to keep your tax credit. So when you file your taxes, when you file your taxes, what that, in this example that I gave previously, that $9,000, you can use that $9,000 however you want. If you want to pay down the balance, if you want to use it for home improvement, you want to pay down debt, whatever you want to do with your tax credit is yours. 2, we don't have dealer fees. I don't charge solar installers or solar sales company. I don't charge them those 15 to 20 points. So those savings should be passed along back to you. So it should save you, the consumer, quite a bit of money. 3rd, because it's a first lien and it's a part of your mortgage, you get to include that in any of your tax benefits, or not in any of your, it's tax deductible loans. So essentially, your mortgage payment is also making your power payment. On top of that, it makes your home easier to sell, because when you sell your house, when you pay off your mortgage, the house is done. There's no other loans that you have to sell. You don't have to worry about if anybody qualifies for it. So it makes your home easier to sell because you own the power. It increases the value of your home, and it's the simplicity of all-in-one transaction. So those are some pros and cons of the 5 different ways that you can pay for solar.